Okay, well, I'll just reiterate what I said with Pierre. I think that the way to attack this Lions team is going in the air through their secondary. I mean, Josh Allen is coming off of a heater with that historic performance that we saw here. There we go. Got a little thrown off there. But coming off of that historic performance, 3 touchdowns in the air, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 52 fantasy points. I mean, all the accolades keep him coming. He strengthened his case for MVP. I don't think we mentioned that tonight, but even in that loss, he did strengthen his case to be the NFL MVP. So I think they want to continue on with that if he is playing at this high level because, he played very, very well in the snow against San Francisco, played very, very well against Kansas City. So
Yep.
I think the key to this game is Josh Allen, especially getting his number 2 and 3 receivers back. Now, the thing that does scare me though is their run defense, because flipping over to the Lions, I think that is going to be how they want to attack this Bills team. Now, they could go after Rasul Douglas' side, because if he plays, he's probably not going to be 100%. And if he doesn't play, it's going to be either Jamarcus Ingram or Kyer Elam. So I could see the Lions wanting to pick on that side of the field with that zone defense that the Bills play. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to come down to the Bills' run defense against David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, because they are, I don't remember the exact stat off the top of my head, but they both have 10 plus touchdowns this season. Are they the first duo in NFL history to have more than 10 rushing touchdowns each? Was that the stat that I saw?
I don't know. I didn't see that. I wouldn't think that's true, but if you saw it, I would think that there's been a duo that's gone over 10 each, but maybe not.
Yeah, I would have to double. Maybe Pat can find that for us, Pat, if you don't mind, if you could research that stat. But I know there is some stat between the running backs having 10 rushing touchdowns each, and I believe that they are both on pace for 1,000 yards. I know Gibbs has already surpassed 1,000. Montgomery can get there too, especially if he has a great game on Sunday. So I believe they would be the first running back duo since
maybe running back duo, not including a quarterback, maybe, but I couldn't see that being in general.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if Pat can find it, but I believe that they are the first duo since D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. If they can get to 1,000 yards, it'll be the first time that 2 running backs have each surpassed 1,000 yards since 2009. So 15 years that it took to get to that. So I think all that to say, it's going to come down to Josh Allen against David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, which is kind of weird to say, especially in 2024. But I really think that the Lions are a different type of team. I mean, we were worried about this type of game after that Baltimore game. For as much as we say, oh man, Derrick Henry is 1 of 1. Well, the Lions as a team are 1 of 1 as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they play off of that defensive performance. I don't believe the Bills are going to want to look like that on back-to-back weeks. It's just not something they generally do often, even against the 2-game losing streak with Baltimore, Houston. The Bills play a lot better against Houston. Their offense was actually terrible against Houston. They had no players available, no Shakir. Like, it was just an overall a mess with what the Bills looked like in that game. But I don't believe Houston did anything in that second half. So it's just a completely different style of game. The Bills aren't going to get got again in terms of defensively. I do think there's going to be some points put up in this game. But I think the Bills may look a little bit better defensively. I still think that maybe there'll be a little bit more defense in this than either team is hoping for, especially the Bills off the Rams game, where they're getting into the 40s and they're scoring all these points. I don't think the Bills really want to get into that kind of a shootout again. So I think both teams are going to try to limit possessions each other, thus being deep into games with, like, I could see a 10-10 game at halftime, 13-13, some scenario to where they're both trying to limit what each other are doing. I still think that it's so hard to predict, like, these games where you've already in the tournament, like, I don't care what anybody says, are tough games. Detroit has a whole division going for them. They still have very much in the 1 seed battle. The Bills have like an outside shot to if you finally think the Chiefs lose 2. I don't. I think the Chiefs probably drop 1 game down the stretch, possibly in a world there's 2. But ultimately the Bills need to go into the playoffs as healthy as humanly possible. And how much can you care about the 2 versus 3 seed? That's still something that every team's going to talk about ad nauseum. So the Bills need to, in my opinion, I think they're going to stretch the issue of short, quick passes, play a lot of man. Josh Allen's really good against man. get first downs with his legs, just went for 80 plus yards. He's having a great productive rushing year again. I just need him to be healthy, man. I just need this roster to be healthy more than anything, especially going into these 3 very winnable AFC divisional games. And the Bills can pretty much get what they need done in those 3 games. But you would like to go into those 3 games off of a win and with a shot at the 1 seed and pretty much the 2 in hand. Just like he mentioned, they're going to be rooting for the Steelers. We're going to be rooting for the Eagles for the 2 seed battle. But so that's what's going to make this a little bit more interesting, is they're playing at the same exact time. So you got a Fox game of Eagles, Steelers. Then you got another notch up on the game. You got Bills Lions on CBS. So you got quite a slate that unfortunately Bills fans are going to have to miss most of the other one, because that's a dang good game. And we're going to probably get bad primetime games, but we're going to have to miss that one, which is unfortunate, because we got Raiders Falcons on Monday Night Football. Ugh, Bears Vikings. That's terrible too. That's disgusting. At least we got 49ers Rams is a pretty decent game. But those other 2 primetime games are brutal, especially for having these 2 games in the same time slot. That's just unfortunate as the Bills are going forward. But Kevin, bring us into score predictions. And, we'll get Pat up here to give his score prediction, but we're going to start with you. We're going to go to Pat, and then we'll end it on me.
Real quick, before we do that, I have 2 things. One, Pat did confirm that, so I have it right here. Gibbs and Montgomery are the first duo in NFL history each with double-digit rushing touchdowns in consecutive seasons. So Montgomery has 12, Gibbs has 10. That being said, I got to ask you this before we give our score predictions, because I asked Pat at the beginning of the show, and now I want to ask you. Do you think that there's a scenario where the Bills could use Dorian Williams more this Sunday, considering how tough of a matchup this is? Now, the thing that I'll say is, I know that it's Matt Milano, but at the same time, he's not the same Matt Milano. He's not the same all-pro top 5 linebacker right now at this moment. And I think they're trying to get him ramped up for the playoffs. So do you think, I'm not saying that they should bench Milano, but do you think that they could at least sprinkle Dorian in a little bit, maybe play a little bit 4-3 with 3 linebackers? Or do you think it's just going to be heavy nickel the whole game?
4-3, 0% chance. 0. I don't know what would have to happen to see a 4-3. So that's completely out. As far as taking some from Milano, 10% chance that could happen. I mean, if the Bills are really worried, that's sending a message though, Kevin. That is saying that in a game where all you're playing for is seeding, that is completely true. Like, the Bills are not playing for anything, but hopefully maybe having a shot at 1 and really locking down the 2. They're not playing for an overall amount of stuff. It is what it is. Like, we can try to fire McDermott after losing to the Rams if we want. But ultimately, like, if you look at what's at stake, I don't think you take him off the field to try to ramp him up for the playoffs. If you make that move, that's a move you're making now. Like, you're making that move, making Milano a backup. So, anything's possible if they really looked at his film and said, you know what, we're going with Dorian. I don't believe that's just a snap move here, snap move there. I think that's a full, like, swapping of the players. At that stage, if they do that, it's not out of the question. I don't think there's any % chance at a 4-3 unless, like, literally in the 4th quarter, the Bills cannot stop a single run. With if Rapp's out, it could make things interesting to where you can get tricky with who you have on the field in general, but they're not taking Taron Johnson off the field. So if there's another tricky way to do it with that injury, possibly I could see it. But the Bills just do not do that often. One of the only times I reference is that great win game of the New England Patriots. You don't see McDermott get Taron Johnson off the field ever. So that gets tricky with who would come out. Rapp could make that interesting if he's unable to go. But outside of that, you could bench Milano. It's possible. Like, there is a world they do that. But I don't think it's like he plays pass downs, he plays run downs. They want Milano to take all the snaps. And if there's a major issue, if they make that move at some point in the game, say in the start of the 3rd quarter, you're benching Milano at that point. You don't swap him in and out, in my opinion. So that's kind of where
for the most part. The last thing I'll say real quick is I just think that Dorian deserves more than 0 defensive snaps, because he did not play any defensive snaps this past Sunday, and the Bills were getting gashed. Again, I'm not saying that they have to bench Milano, make him a backup, or demote him of any means. I just think sometimes sprinkle him in, mix it up, whether it's first down, second down, third downs. Yeah, you're probably going to want to keep Milano out there, especially when it's a passing situation. But if it's like third and short, fourth and short, I might think about putting Dorian out there. I mean, this guy was almost leading the league. He was second in the league in tackles. I can't remember exactly what week it was, but
tackles isn't a good stat of how you're playing, though, man. Like that's not a good stat. It's like the worst stat of stats. Like I'd rather you talk about like rush stats than like tackles. Like that's one of the worst. Dorian Williams stinks. I don't think he's very good at football.
He doesn't stink.
I don't think
he's not great, but he can at least defend the run a lot better than some linebackers.
He's one of the biggest pass liabilities, in my opinion. So, like, the biggest thing is, like, you don't know, like, against a team like the Lions, what they're in, right? So you don't know if they're running or passing. Like, you could assume they're going to run here. So let's have Dorian Williams in the game to stop the run. But they see Dorian in the game, and now they're seeing you, like, do this weird rotation. Ben Johnson's going to remember that, and they're going to know. They think we're going to run here. Jared Goff goes to the line, taps his helmet. And they make an adjustment. So that's the issue that you'll have with doing like a switch of linebackers. You could just bench Milano. I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm saying that you can bench Milano and put in Williams full time. That's sure within the realm of possibilities.
I don't want to do that.
Then yeah, I wouldn't envision. The Bills don't play a 4-3, unfortunately. I think he's such a liability in pass coverage that you can't play him. He's got some flashes against the run. He is poor against the pass. And maybe this is a game you could try to get away with it, but then you look at their pass weapons with Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown over the middle, and I don't know that you can get away with him in this game. But down the stretch, you could see him definitely in these 3 AFC games, I guess. But those may be the games where you want to get Milano reps. So I don't really know how they're going to play it, but you could certainly say, Dorian is definitely going to give us an advantage against a team that can really run the ball. Unfortunately, Milano's going to sit this game, and then we'll see him in the next 3. I don't think that's crazy to assume, but it's definitely not going to be like a switchy swappy, because Jared Goff's going to recognize, just like Josh Allen would, like they're doing this weird rotation by like the third play that they do that. He's going to start calling, checks and hurries, and he's going to target that player, because then now you're telling the team what you're in too. Now you're saying Dorian's in. We may have a run blitz called. Dorian's in. Let's run a quick slant. Let's run tight end option. Let's run a tight end corner. Let's do these things because they think we're going to run the ball. So it just unfortunately, the way the tell of it is unfortunately not able to as much as you could with like a defensive tackle where guy needs a blow, so you're able to do it that way. But I don't see the linebacking rotation. But I mean, ultimately, I don't really mind. It's a business. You're paying Milano a lot of money. You need him to get back to form. And Dorian Williams is a liability in coverage. And how much of that are you willing to oversee based on his run stopping ability? That's on Sean McDermott to tell you, but that would come with a Milano basically saying in this game against the Lions, you're going to see almost all Dorian Williams. They could do that on a 1-game basis. I wouldn't be totally shocked. But I don't believe that's the way that they'll go.
Yeah, I just think he's big, strong, and athletic in the sense that he can get after these running backs and he can shoot those gaps. But I guess we will we'll have to wait and see how McDermott decides to play it out.
It's not crazy if they want to go to him for the entire game, though. I don't think it's totally crazy to assume that they'd be like, you know what, Dorian's going to give us a better chance in this matchup